At what point does Newcastle stop becoming regional? It's a whole city. But anyway, that's another, another topic.
I had that thought too. Like when you see Newcastle's regional, I was like, well, they've got an NRL team, they've got a A-League team. You know, at what point does it stop becoming a regional centre and actually becoming a city? If you say you don't like live music, we take you to a client liaison or a Lime Cordial gig or, you know, something like that and be like, I dare you not to smile and move.
But I want to know who the bloody... It's 90.7%. So who are your 9.3? And what are they doing at gigs? Because they're going to live music events and then going, I don't think this contributes to the vibrancy of cities and communities.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Yeah, well...
Check 1, 2.
Welcome. Yeah, first time you said that in a few weeks, pal.
I know I've been slack for quite a little while now.
Not slack at all.
It is nice to be chatting to you again because it's been a little while since we've actually... The last time we saw each other face to face was at my wedding, which was now just over a month ago. So it's probably one of the longest time frames we've had without actually seeing each other.
In bloody six odd years, apart from there was a couple of our respective Europe trips and things here and there, but yeah, it would be up there.
Certainly for a long time anyway. So forgive us if at least the first half of this podcast is just to catch up, but we will promise to get into the news properly. But no, it is nice to be...
Just before we even go any further, I just want to interject here and say that last time I saw Cam was at his wedding, and it was a beautiful wedding, and we must first and foremost congratulate you on a wonderful wedding.
Thank you.
It was fantastic. It was a really fun night. But one of the, not the last time, but during that night, one of the last images I have of Cam is him either on the shoulders of someone else going absolutely ham on the dance floor, or, and this was a real personal favourite, getting a strip dance on the dance floor, not from his wife.
No.
From Josh.
Yeah, one of my groomsmen. It was funny because probably about 10 minutes before that happened, he went to take his pants off, and one of my other groomsmen's, his wife was like, no, you're at a wedding. Like, you can't do that. And then Pony Genuine came on and he just couldn't control himself. The pants came off, the shirt came off. And then my brother-in-law got a chair and put it in the middle of the dance floor, pushed me on it, told me to sit down, and then, yeah, I got a lap dance on the night of my wedding.
Which is excellent from the brother-in-law. Like, that's great brother-in-lawing.
That's, I think, welcome to the family, you know.
Yes, that's
absolutely. Acceptance.
Absolutely. So how was the honeymoon? Cam and I spoke on the phone last night for a little bit, just catching up. But it did look fantastic, and I certainly didn't hear and see everything that I will over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'll fill you in properly when we're not trying to record a podcast, but it was genuinely beautiful. I went to New Zealand for 3 weeks, did the very classic touristy thing of hiring a camper van for a few weeks and just cruising around, sort of, you know, driving 2 to 3 hours a day, sort of going from town to town. We had, the longest stay we had was 5 days, 5 weeks, I wish, 5 days in Queenstown, which is absolutely stunning. It was probably the highlight of the trip. But it's a bit of a cliche and everyone says it, but New Zealand properly is a beautiful country.
Did you take the piss out of any Kiwis? Like, did you do the fish and chips or anything to them in person, or is that something reserved for behind their back across the ocean?
I mean, to my wife, I said that a couple of times, and one of my personal favourites was driving through Wellington, going, "It's the cake tin," because they call the stadium the cake tin. But no, we did a Milford Sounds tour. And the tour guide was a Kiwi who, once she found out we were Aussies, was more than happy to take the piss out of us. So it was a bit of a reciprocal relationship on the day where we take the piss out of them, you know, joke about the amount of sheep to humans they have and the subsequent jokes that come along with that. And yeah, it was fun. It was a really awesome 3 weeks. Nice to get away, but back into the swing of things now. And thank you as well, I should say, for holding down the fort while we were gone. Hopefully no one really noticed that I was gone because we did record podcasts ahead of time, and some of the social posts Eamon was doing and, you know, the who's who articles on our website and all that stuff. So hopefully people didn't even know that I had disappeared for effectively a month. But I do want to thank you for holding down the fort.
That was the plan. So yeah, you can let us know either way whether you noticed or not. But hopefully also you've been enjoying our programming too, just generally. And we'll get to that at a completely different time to this. But hope you're enjoying what we're producing for the Central Coast. And today for the music news, because it is our first belated music news. And in typical belated fashion, we are bringing you a story that is about 8 days old, but not 8 days old in relevance. It remains very, very relevant. We're going to dive into it today.
And just speaking of belatedness, this podcast is out now, obviously, but it'll be released tomorrow as of recording. It is currently Wednesday evening, so it is a very last minute recording, and it will be a rush job to get this up. So if there's any errors in the editing that you might hear, just please forgive us, because we would just want to make sure we get this up so you can actually enjoy this podcast. But 8 days old, 9 days, I guess, if you're listening to this on the day of release. But as ever, it feels like with Australian music, we could probably find a story we said 3 or 4 years ago and it still would have relevance today, which is the beauty and the curse of being involved with Australian music.
It is absolutely the case. It's much like being involved with Australian football, actually, which is a whole other topic entirely. But we are talking. We actually, you know what? We're talking about something that is actually entirely new, and we're going to get into kind of some nitty gritty facts, details. It's a report. But the report comes from Sound New South Wales, and it's the first of its kind report called State of the Scene. Now, that might just sound really boring, mumbo jumbo, whatever, while you're talking about this report to us, which is understandable because we've talked about reports before. But what makes this significant, particularly for music in New South Wales, is that it comes from Music New South Wales. And if you want a quick refresher on that, I'll say firstly, before I say this, that we did, when the whole Music New South Wales thing came about back in our radio days, we did a music news on exactly that. And if you want a bit more depth and insight into what this body is, then you can go back through the archives, Homebrewed, and listen to it there. But basically, music. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say it's Sound New South Wales. So, I mean, look, we're a little bit rusty. It's been over a month since we actually sat down and recorded an episode. But yeah, it is Sound New South Wales, not Music New South Wales. I mean,
I'm so sorry.
Music's just sound anyway. So.
Same thing. No, it's literally right in front of me, and I've just been saying Music New South Wales. I think it's Music Australia is the federal body, if that's any consolation to myself. But anyway,
but even I feel like that's more confusing.
I know that there should be continuity. It's also the same party in power, so surely they're having a yarn to each other and going, mate, maybe we should call it both music or both sound. But anyway, that's beside the point. Sound New South Wales is the body. That is the state government's go-to for music in this state. And Sound New South Wales did not exist before the last election. It was actually came to be as a result of what we have credited as some really, really significant music commitments and policies that came from the Minns government when they came into power and when they were running for that election. And again, this isn't any kind of partisanship towards one party or another, or the Minns government in particular, because I'm sure we both have plenty of criticisms in other areas of that government. But this has been so far a really good piece of policy, and it even dwarfed the federal, I believe, the federal government's own policy for the whole of Australia, what they were putting into music in New South Wales alone.
And more than Victoria as well, which we took as a W at the time as well, because those Victorians are always looking down on us. We're always looking up at Victoria as well, because they have a really good live music scene, which we've discussed ad nauseum on Homebrewed. But the amount of spending that they had promised for New South Wales was the largest probably ever, I dare say. It was certainly the largest promise at that election as well. So it's nice to finally see that their first report that's come out of this new organisation, Sound New South Wales, not Music New South Wales. We'll just clarify that once more. Sound New South Wales.
I know what it is, and this is just another defence I'm going to introduce to the court.
Yeah, we'll hear
it. We're doing the music news, and I'm talking about the Music New South Wales. So I think that's where it came from. I will not take any retorts. But anyway, moving on from that. Sound New South Wales has released his policy. It's called State of the Scene. And it's basically just a whole look into the music scene industry in New South Wales. And it's the first of its kind, which is really significant. So I know this stuff sounds really boring and whatever, but to actually have a team of people that they've committed to going and doing this investigation so that they can go and find the figures, come back, issue this report, and everybody learns something from it is how government works. And often government can be criticised for overdoing that. They over-administrate and investigate and do too many reports and commissions, a la the New South Wales policy on drugs generally.
I was just going to mention that. Yeah, the amount of times, how many inquiries and reports can we have on the same issue before you actually start to look at those findings and take action? And that is what I'm hoping does come out of this, is that we have the key findings, they can go away and discuss them and analyse them, and then hopefully implement some policies and some more investment moving forward to try and help generate more growth with music in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's I mean, if we can take a swipe now at the Minns government, they are doing, on that note, a drug summit, which is what the only thing Chris Minns will commit to is a drug summit, despite having umpteen reports with the clearest possible findings as to what we should be doing to minimise drug harm in this state. But anyway, we'll leave that there for now. Sound New South Wales is headed by Emily Collins, and the whole aim of this body, as I said, is to provide advice to assist the state government, New South Wales, to help create positive outcomes for artists, industry professionals, businesses that are involved in music, and audiences as well, which is very, very important. And what it's found, and I will say before we get into the details, the only thing I wish we had with this is what last year's was like and the year before that.
There's no year-on-year data growth or decline or anything like that. And I mean, there's probably also an element where the last few years it'd be hard to capture that data because they were COVID interrupted, or, you know, there were different interruptions with all of that, where it feels like the last, I guess, 6 to 12 months has felt like the most normal that we've had since COVID. And I say normal in terms of being able to actually just go and attend a gig without worrying about if it's going to be cancelled because of COVID. But of course, we know there are so many other issues going on in the world and also with the music sector that it's still not normal, but it's probably the closest we've had since pre-COVID.
Yeah, totally. And it is. And it's like, yeah, it would be some weird data we'd be comparing to, but of course you have to start somewhere. And this is the first edition of this State of the Scene report. The research from this was gathered from 750 people that work in the live music industry via questionnaires, stakeholder interviews, and also focus groups. And the report also heard from 550 punters, members of the public who are from Sydney and across regional New South Wales that attend live music events. So they're talking to the right people straight away. And this is what I mean when I say it's really good to see the government, like that's to coordinate and make all of that happen is not easy. To speak to that many people, to hold focus groups, stakeholder interviews, all that kind of stuff, that would have cost them money. They've got a team of people that are now working on this from the government for the betterment of the scene in the state, which I think is really positive, and we've never had that before. But of their findings, some of the key findings they've identified, about 90% of the New South Wales public who attend live music agree that live music contributes to the vibrancy of cities and communities.
I'd be shocked if that number was any less, I feel.
Absolutely.
Like, because it's like going to a Trump rally and saying, who thinks that Trump was correct in everything that he's done? And you're going to have the most people agree. Like the point I'm making, it's a very on-side crowd in that people who attend live music understand that it does add vibrancy to the cities and communities and the importance that role plays. So, you know, I think it's a good number for them to put out, but I don't know. I don't necessarily know if that stat in particular means too much.
But I want to know who the bloody, it's 90.7%. So who are your 9.3? And what are they doing at gigs? Because they're going to live music events and then going, I don't think this contributes to the vibrancy of cities and communities, unless if they're just seeing bands that they don't actually like and therefore they're coming out of it going, this sucked.
Yeah, maybe they've just walked in off the street to a smaller pub venue gig and they've gone, no, that was rubbish. No, I didn't enjoy that. And then that's why I don't know. That's what I mean. If the number was any less than that, I'd be perhaps more concerned. And maybe it'll be less than that next year. And maybe that is why it's an important stat to showcase, because it could be a backwards going trend, which we don't want to see. 90.9% of the respondents who work in the live music industry agree that live music can be a powerful form of cultural expression, particularly for marginalised groups, which, again, I don't know who the remaining 8% of people are who don't agree that it does. But anyway, 90.9% of people do. But perhaps, these are now these are the ones that we can actually properly, I guess, calculate across and see the growth, because $372.7 million of ticket revenue was generated.
Yeah, and so a few takeaways from this. I mean, those first two stats, you do say it's kind of obvious, and I agree 100%. But I think that these are really good stats, and to track year on year. And also, I think why they gather this stuff is to throw it at the bean counters, the accountants bloody up top, level 4 of the New South Wales government that are allocating money, and the politicians themselves, and go, look, guys, because as we've spoken about quite a bit on the show over the years, so many people struggle to see, okay, well, what's it going to bring to us in terms of economic benefit or, fiscal delivery in the state. Because a lot of people just see numbers and nothing else. So the vibrancy of cities and communities makes for healthier cities and communities, which probably saves money somewhere. I definitely would. And also cultural expression is critical for happiness for people just generally. So there's those two. And then we've also got, look, hard numbers. You want your numbers, $372 million of ticket revenue generated, which is no small feat from tickets alone. That's not even including the whole industry, which we said is valued about $5.5 billion. And it relates to another thing that we've spoken about a fair bit, where this industry is actually a significant economic contributor in the state, but it doesn't get seen or treated often, or at least previously. I think that's changing now, but it wasn't previously seen and treated with the same respects of any other industry, say, whether it be, agriculture or office supplies. If it was contributing that much to the state economy, they'd be bending over backwards. But what we saw in previous governments was almost a total disregard for an industry that was actually contributing a fair bit to the state's coffers in one way or another.
Yeah, I can appreciate, the reason why they've asked these people these certain questions is to try and lobby the government or to try and justify why they're spending more money on music, which I'm absolutely on board with. I think we do need more investment. But at the same time, would it perhaps be a more perhaps accurate estimation to find people who, not at music events, just to go down to the park and ask people about music, or to go, find people at sporting events and see what they think about music? Because it still feels like, you go to a mining town and ask people, do you think mining is important? You're going to have 90% respondents saying yes, where people in non-mining towns, or, the same way that people in the aviation industry would probably say their importance in the community and the economy, they probably have similar numbers, but you ask people not in that industry what their thoughts of that are. Perhaps that is going to be a better reflection of how people in general feel about these particular industries. So I would like to see those numbers as well, and how they might compare to people who are in the industry. Because of course we're all on board, but you might have, the general community perhaps not understanding the importance of it. And maybe that is also where government's role is, to sort of showcase that importance.
Yeah, well, but maybe if the government are involved, what we do is we just go find the people who aren't keen on live music and then just imprison them. Because, you've already got the government there. Surely they can get the coppers on, Bob's your uncle.
If you say you don't like live music, we take you to a client liaison or a lime cordial gig, or something like that, and be like, I dare you not to smile and move.
Yep. That's a start anyway. They had the best places to go out, and this is interesting. Obviously, kind of Metropolitan, Sydney CBD came in first. Regional, Newcastle was the pick of the bunch for best places to go out. Now, I'm sure there's someone out in Wagga Wagga shaking their fist right now. They go, not on, mate. But Newcastle comes in, and I also would just like, at what point does Newcastle stop becoming regional? It's a whole city. But anyway, that's another, another topic.
I had that thought too. Like when you see Newcastle's regional, I was like, well, it does make sense that is going to be the best place to go out in regional New South Wales, because they would have the most options and the bigger population. So of course it's going to be a bit of a hub. But yeah, compared to, go to Wagga or here on the Central Coast, even, there are sort of smaller towns that would have a bit of a booming local music scene. But yeah, it almost goes back to the pandemic thing about, are we Greater Sydney or Greater Hunter region? Like, what are we? Newcastle.
We don't even know. We're called the Central Coast, for God's sake.
Yeah, Newcastle.
What even is that?
Is it regional anymore? Like they've got a domestic airport, they've got a big city in Skyrise, they've got a stadium. They've got an NRL team, they've got a A-League team. Still just recently announced they've still only just got an A-League team. But at what point does it stop becoming a regional centre and actually becoming a city?
That is my question, and there's some apt comparison. It's like it's like the 80 kilo weight class division, just like still going in and saying, "No, I'm still 65," and then just going and bashing all the 65-year-olds in the boxing. 65 kilo fighters.
If you're 15 years old and they say, "No, you're 12 because you get in for free," that's what
exactly. That's a much better comparison. What they also found, which probably won't come as much of a surprise to anyone, is that the high-cost operating environment is creating barriers to growth for the live scene. And the industry generally, high cost of living has made it difficult for people to attend live music events in recent years, and people are being more selective with their ticket purchases or choosing to stay in, the report says. So that isn't much of a surprise, but it's for that reason that I made the comment before about wanting to have data from previous years to just know where we're at, because we are in a pretty unique time, both off the back of COVID, but also with everything costing $1,000, no matter what it is, that it'd be really interesting to compare what kind of impact that is having on ticket purchasing and the size and opportunity in the scene generally. But as you said, the first time has to be sometime, and it's now. Obviously that's having an impact.
Yeah, it would be nicer to have that actual data, because we've spoken about it, a bit more just conversationally about these are all the different issues that we're facing at the moment. These are all contributing as to why people aren't necessarily attending gigs, but it would be nice to have that data broken down specifically, and then, as you mentioned, reflect on that in a year's time and then see how that's potentially changed and what other conditions globally and within the industry have changed in that time as well. And, it might be a good indication as to how we can continue to improve, because I guess that's the ultimate goal of doing these studies and surveys, is to continue the growth and year-on-year improvements within the industry to make it more enjoyable and better for everyone involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will see that, as you said, over time. Some cool data. Some other interesting things that came out of this, 795 establishments offer live music in the state. Only 55 are dedicated venues where live music is the key function of the business. Now, I don't know how that compares to other states or other countries in the world, but if there's 795, it would be nice to see that number a little bit higher, I think, because we're a state of, 6, 7, I don't know how many million people live in New South Wales, but quite a few. So only 55 dedicated. But of course, we know there's also a lot of venues that do a lot of other stuff, and how they classified that, I'm not 100% sure. 453 venues featured ongoing and regular live music programming. And then there was also large-scale multi-purpose venues like your Kudos Bank Arenas, etc., that offer live music as part of their broader offerings, stadiums, all that kind of stuff. and then 230 venues in the state offer some kind of music as an ancillary function of their business. So I'd say that's like, you know, the Leagues Club that gets a cover artist in once a week or something like that.
Even perhaps like a Mumbo Jumbos would fall into that. You know, their Wednesday nights, they do the music, but it's perhaps not the core function of their business, as opposed to a Drifter's Wharf where, I mean, even Drifter's Wharf, I don't even know if that would count as a dedicated music venue. They have that room, which is perfectly set up for it, but at the end of the day, they're still a restaurant.
Yeah, it's a good question. It would be interesting to know how they classified that. So maybe we're being a bit too harsh on that, or I am, that number 55, because it could be a venue that has artists in every week. However, it just offers other stuff too.
Do we have a dedicated venue on the coast? At any scale? Like, obviously, larger scale, the biggest is Drifters that we just mentioned, which is a restaurant as well as a live music venue. You got Mumbo, Lincoln Pin, but that's still a cafe at the end of the day, isn't it?
That's what I was thinking. Lincoln Pin would come close because it is like, you know, known primarily because it's a live music venue, but it does also do cafe stuff. So maybe we don't. And maybe that's a whole other question entirely. And maybe it's also just saying the best way to function as a business is to do more than just one thing when you're outside of cities. So I think, you know, you go places like the Metro Theatre in Sydney, that's a dedicated live music venue as it should be. But that's because it's surrounded by 4 million people and has bands in, you know, like several nights a week. So other businesses outside of those areas, it's probably just in their best interests to offer other stuff.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And as we touched on, you know, the different pressures and difficulties around the industry and live music probably makes it untenable to be able to actually put on, to be a dedicated live music venue, because even if you are putting on live shows 7 days a week, which is very rare, I would imagine, particularly for regional areas, you're not going to get the people coming through the gates to make it worthwhile.
Yep, absolutely. And then just a couple of, well, basically the last stat that I think is really interesting from this, over 14,000 direct workers are employed via the New South Wales live music industry, which is huge. And a further 10,920 are employed in indirect jobs. So that's again, when we speak about, like, you know, what other employer, there are other employers obviously, but that's in the upper tiers of employing individuals in this state one way or another. When we speak about how seriously it's taken or has been taken by government, you're talking about a total of nearly 25,000 people employed either directly or indirectly by the live music industry in this state. So I think that's a really significant number. And as we said at the start, that creates an output of 5.5 billion annually for New South Wales.
What do they mean by direct and indirect? Is it like contract and full-time employee, or how do they calculate that?
So my understanding would be direct is like you work as a result of live music. So your job is directly in live music. Indirect might be you're pouring beers at Drifters.
Right.
And you'll have a job because people are coming to the shows every weekend. Whereas a direct would be you are a light rigger, or you're a road crew, or you're a band manager.
Yeah, okay. That makes
kind
sense.
of stuff.
Yep.
So it's a lot of jobs that either wouldn't be there at all or wouldn't be there to some degree if we didn't have a live music industry in this state.
Just on the jobs too, I'd be very interested to know the breakdown of full-time employees within the industry and contract sort of workers as well. I dare say there'd be a whole lot of contract workers in the industry, whether you're a photographer or like a reviewer, or whether you are working at one of the live shows as well, either in sound or stage or lighting or any of that setup. I dare say there'd be a lot of self-employed and contract workers within the industry, which, you know, was one of the issues we spoke about during COVID, which was that a lot of those people are leaving the industry because they don't have that security. So I would be curious to know that job percentage breakdown as well.
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely.
even attainable.
Well, we know overwhelmingly there's a lot of contract work, self-employed, sole trader kind of stuff going on within this industry, which is good and bad. And as you said, in COVID, a lot of those people left or were high and dry because they didn't have those, kind of bona fide hours or, protections that came as a result of their employment. So yeah, that's something as well. And yeah, that's basically the wrap up of the key data from that. But I would encourage you, if you are into this kind of stuff and you are interested to look at it, to go and have a look at the whole State of the Scene report. It's 30 odd pages. It looks, really good if that's your thing. But it does have some nice breakdowns and it's a bit more visually appealing if that's how you interpret information. You can find that on the New South Wales Government website. Just search State of the Scene Sound New South Wales, not Music New South Wales. and that should come up and you'll be able to have a look there. And of course, they are collecting this data. Sound New South Wales now has this data. They're not just going to file it away and do nothing with it. And that's why we're talking about this at the end of the day. This is significant because it's the first of its kind, but it's also as a government going, we need to know more. And what they're going to do is use what they find here to deliver the state's first ever 10-year contemporary music strategy, which they're saying will set an ambitious vision for music in New South Wales. So that's what this data is going to go into and inform, and that's going to translate into policy. So that's the steps of government in action, but they're doing it exclusively and specifically for music and live music in this state, which we have not seen before. And that's why this story, we think, is significant.
Do we have any maybe predictions? It's probably not, we're not placed to make predictions, but any hopes or wishes for what some of those what their ambitious vision for music in New South Wales will be over the next sort of 10 years as part of their plan? Any hopes for what they might be able to produce?
Well, my hope, and I don't think we're going to do it entirely the same, but if we could get to this kind of level of cultural appreciation akin to something like Berlin, which for a different reason has World Heritage listed its nightclub scene because they've deemed it so valuable. And they're coming with that is a whole lot of protections for it, which mean, you can't tear down venues, you can't come in and develop areas, you can't, there's support for venues and operating and that kind of stuff, because that city and the German government or whatever kind of municipal or state or whatever, how it works over there, has identified that this is so important for our culture that we need to preserve it. Now, I'm not saying we need to come and World Heritage list. I don't think they'd accept the New South Wales live scene at the moment, but that kind of thinking towards your industry and your scene and its importance for the state and then more broadly the country and the people who live in it and how they develop and the type of people they eventually will turn out to be, and then what they give back to your country, because that's a holistic view. Why is culture important? Because it's kind of the basis of human existence. It's kind of why how we express ourselves, how we connect, and then recognizing that, supporting that, and moving forward in a way where we're saying we want to support this now because we see it making our country even better, going down the track and helping people. So that's kind of what I'd like to see the beginnings of. Obviously, that's a very big and multifaceted area to unpack. But if we could have government starting to tune into that properly, because Cam, we have sat in various chairs in front of various microphones over the years bemoaning the fact that it's almost relegated to an afterthought or not, seen as trivial by the people who make the decisions. If we could have a policy that starts the steps to mean that never happens again, I think that is what we should be aiming for. And obviously that brings with it a lot of happiness and a lot of good music.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it feels like it's never prioritized by the government, but it is always, and we mentioned it, during COVID and during the bushfires as well, but it's always the first thing that governments go to try and uplift morale whenever something terrible is happening, is that the music industry puts on, as it was for Firefight, it was a music festival in Sydney to raise money for the bushfires and the victims and the firefighters and the ongoing efforts with that. Same with during COVID, it became a thing of lockdown gigs and the music industry sort of rallying together to uplift morale. And as you mentioned, culture, it's not an overnight fix, but if it is part of their 10-year strategy to try and revitalise music in New South Wales. If they can get the culture happening, everything naturally will breed from that. But it is such a difficult thing to change, but it does have to come, I think, initially from policy, because there is a thirst for it, but there's no confidence from those that it's actually going to happen or to stick around. Or, you know, as a consumer, why should I invest so much of my time and energy into supporting this when the government can just snap their fingers and look, there's a new development coming in after all the money I've poured into this music venue. Oh, look, we're going to put up apartments now. It has to come from government policy first, I think, to give the consumers that confidence that then that culture can sort of grow and change. And just quickly, while we're speaking of developments, tying it back to the New Zealand honeymoon that we're talking about at the start, one of the things that blew me away was just how much land, like farmland, that there is in New Zealand. There's so much. I mean, they have a smaller population, obviously, but like I drove through a farm that fronted onto a beach, and that blew me away because you would never see that in this state, because that is prime residential development land that everyone wants their hands on. But in New Zealand, I mean, it probably does have to do with the population, and, you know, that's not near quite big city centres where we were driving through. It was just along the coastline, but it does show, in it, you know, that development hungry side that we see in this state. It does have an impact, you know, culturally when it comes to music, and obviously financially as well. Is music, as we said, is a $5.5 million or billion rather dollar industry. Like it's worthwhile investing in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Cam, if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly, is that New South Wales should put live music venues on the beach. Is that what you're saying? Like 1,000 of them.
Yeah, big festival setups right on the beach.
Yep.
Knock down all the homes. We don't need them.
No.
We don't have a housing crisis either.
You've got enough sheep. See ya. Like we're putting a bloody venue up. So thanks for that, Kiwis. Fish and chips.
Yeah. The Coke tin.
But that's it, the Coke tin. But that's the music news. Back after a few weeks away. That's the latest update. Of course, when that 10-year New South Wales contemporary music strategy does come out, you will be hearing about it through us, and we will be sharing our thoughts as we have just done on this report. But
I thought you meant in 10 years' time we'll still be talking about this contemporary plan, and I had to laugh because I don't know. I mean, my hair's already falling off, but I don't think I would have any left if we're still talking about this in 10 years' time.
You know what? It's a version of reality that is absolutely imaginable, which I don't
That's
like.
The scary part.
Signs are positive at the moment, which is good. So we're going to cling to that hope, and it is really good to see. And hopefully, you know, us presenting this to you and talking to you about this has made something that might have slipped your mind or not been engaging for you a bit engaging. And hopefully, you can see why it's important. But you know, we'll also be the first if they start doing 17 reports and we see, you know, FA. In terms of action, we'll be the first to bring you that as well. But that is the music news for now. I hope you have enjoyed that. We'll be back with another select story in the next couple of weeks. But of course, you have been listening to Homebrewed, and if you want to keep listening to Homebrewed, you can check out the artists we interview. We're all about Central Coast music, local artists. You can find that in our feed, Homebrewed, an Australian music podcast. You can also connect with us online via Homebrewed Media, which is our handle for most things, and our website, homebrewed.au.
Wonderful. Well, it was lovely to see you and to chat to you once again, Eamon. I'm not planning on disappearing overseas again anytime soon, so we'll have plenty of catch-ups and chats and podcasts to produce over the next little while. So thank you, and until the next one, enjoy your live music. Support the industry.
That's it. This episode of Homebrewed was produced by Rugby League immortal, amazing golfer, and good friend of mine, Cameron Smith. If you want to catch up with anything else we're doing on Homebrewed, you can catch it at www.homebrewed.au. We record all of our podcasts at Sonora Studios in Tuggerah. So big thanks to Jack Nico and his crew for having us here in the space. And we will see you next time.
Ta-ta and farewell.